Hey, welcome back to the Ping Pong Flix Show. My name is Chris Wong. This is episode 393 of the Ping Pong Flix Show. Today, big news from Batman. Robert Pattinson talks a lot about becoming Batman on Variety. This is his first time he's talking about the Dark Knight himself since being casted and the events leading up to it. So I thought this was a pretty big and interesting story. And it kind of shows a little bit of light on Robert Pattinson a little bit. So I'm just going to read you some snippets of this article. You can go ahead and read this article itself. In the link is in the description below. Robert Pattinson on becoming Batman and why the lighthouse is just weird enough. Robert Pattinson couldn't stop Googling himself. In mid-May, the 33-year-old actor found himself obsessively refreshing his phone on a flight from Los Angeles to the south of France. Pattinson was headed to the Cannes Film Festival for the world premiere of his new movie, The Lighthouse, just days before he was set to start shooting the next Christopher Nolan film, Tenet. But someone had tipped off the press about another top secret project, one the entire world was now reporting on. Pattinson had been cast as the next Batman. The stories were premature. Pattinson hadn't even auditioned yet, and he was horrified that all the chatter would spook Warner Brothers executives into not hiring him. When that thing leaked, I was effing furious, Pattinson recalls on a recent rainy afternoon in London. Everyone was so upset. Everyone was panicking from my team. I sort of thought that had blown up the whole thing. As he scoured the internet for any clues that he'd been cut from the studio's wish list, the man next to him leaned over to say hello. I was sitting next to Christopher McQuarrie, Pattinson says. I'd never met him before. Oh God, he's seen me Googling myself for the past hour. Pattinson tried to explain to the director behind the latest Mission Impossible films what had happened. No worries, McQuarrie said, nodding. I'd probably be doing the same thing. Robert Pattinson never stopped being an internet phenomenon after playing Edward Cullen in the 5-part Twilight series, which grossed an extraordinary $3.3 billion worldwide and turned him into the most lusted after mortal since Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic. But after the franchise ended in 2012, Pattinson took the opposite path from mass blockbusters, working instead with indie auteurs such as David Cronenberg, James Gray, the Safdie brothers, Claire Denis, David McCall. Pattinson relished playing character parts, not needing to worry about hype and audience expectations. Rob definitely had a darker side and is comfortable working in that space, says Robert Eggers, the director of A24's The Lighthouse, which screens this week at the Toronto International Film Festival and opens in theaters on October 18th. And he has a good taste in cinema. I think a lot of directors he likes are doing stuff that isn't run-of-the-mill Hollywood. But in the past few months, Pattinson's career has taken another turn as he begun gravitating back toward the stormy clouds of movie stardom. He spent most of his summer in Estonia making the Nolan film, which arrives in theaters in July 2020. And of course, despite his concerns, he was cast in The Batman and Warner Brothers tentpole from director Matt Reeves that will start shooting this winter and debuts in June 2021. Pattinson can't say exactly what contributed to his process of choosing roles in the past few years. Big movies, generally the parts aren't as interesting, at least the stuff that was coming my way, he says. I guess there was some fear. After Twilight, he wanted to land on solid ground, not lead a life where he was stalked by the paparazzi on his day-to-day errands. He was drawn to quirky and under-the-radar characters that he could sink his teeth into. I think probably would have been a little bit nervous to have gone straight into immediately afterwards, he says about the Batman. So it's kind of interesting when you read about this. It kind of sounds very much almost like Ben Affleck. After Ben Affleck did Daredevil, he didn't want to get involved in that type of movies, and he kind of took a step back. He even did some directing, things like that. Of course, this Robert Pattinson wanted to go into more stranger characters and interesting stories, working with auteur directors. So before coming back into the limelight, side, if you will, with doing The Dark Knight. But it is interesting. And he talks a little bit about how he likes the Batman. This is Pattinson's first interview since being formally anointed as the Dark Knight, and he still seems to be pinching himself about being next in line to put on the latex boots after Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, George Clooney, Christian Bale, and Ben Affleck. Growing up in England, he watched the Tim Burton Batman movies. When I was a kid, it was the only outfit that I had, Pattinson says, but he won't reveal where he used to wear his Batman costume. If I actually said it in an interview, I would definitely have a lot of abuse afterwards, he says, with an outburst of nervous laughter. If I successfully play the character, I can say it at the end. When Pattinson was named as the frontrunner for the role, the backlash on social media was intense. A petition even surfaced on change.org asking Warner Bros. To reconsider. This will ruin my childhood and my dreams, one commenter posted, but Pattinson is surprisingly upbeat about the mixed reaction. To be honest, it was less vitriolic than I was expecting, he says, and he's not deterred by the doubters. It's much more fun when you're an underdog. There's no expectation of you. Many movie stars have been crafting career trajectories similar to Pattinson's, swinging from independent films to blockbusters and back, and indie directors such as Ryan Coogler have infiltrated the superhero world. Pattinson reveals he had informational meeting with Marvel around the time of Guardians of the Galaxy, but nothing came of it. I don't know what I would really be chasing, Pattinson says. The idea of trying that transition after Twilight, I never saw a road in that direction. Batman was different because he was the only comic book character Pattinson always loved. It's actually an interesting part, he says. I think it's because he doesn't have any superpowers. He'd been chasing Batman for much longer than anyone knew. Pattinson had heard that Reeves was working on a script that reimagines Bruce Wayne in the younger years of his life. I'd had Batman in my mind for a while, Pattinson says. It's such an absurd thing to say. I sort of had an idea to do it, and I'd been prodding Matt. He didn't accept any prods. I kept asking to meet him. When Reeves finally finished the script, he relented and agreed to a meeting in Los Angeles. And then I had to kind of try to imagine what he'd written, and I had even read the script. I hadn't even read the script, Pattinson says. I'd come with this pad full of notes. As discussions continued, Pattinson arrived in Cannes in May, and all hell broke loose in the press. It was terrifying, he says. I was like, oh, F, does that screw me? Because they're so intent on secrecy. He found himself attending the Lighthouse premiere in the middle of reading the script pages that he'd just been sent. I'm literally in Cannes in my hotel room rehearsing, Pattinson says. The whole thing was a lot. After the Lighthouse screen to a rapturous standing ovation, Pattinson promptly flew back to LA to try on the Batsuit for the final phase of the high-stakes audition. It's maybe the craziest thing I've ever done in terms of movie stuff, Pattinson says. I put it on. I remember saying it to Matt. It does feel quite transformative. He was like, I would hope it does. You were literally in the Batsuit. Pattinson describes what the moment was like. You do feel very powerful immediately, and it's pretty astonishing. Something that is incredibly difficult to get into, so the ritual of getting into it is pretty humiliating. You've got 5 people trying to shove you into something. Once you've got it on, it's like, yeah, I feel strong, I feel tough, even though I have someone squeezing my butt cheeks into the legs. Although he had a clear take on how he'd play Batman, he had to adjust his movements to his new latex body. You're trying to think of a way to balance, how to bring something new to it and not want to scare people off, Pattinson says, and work in the confines of the costume. 5 days later, he officially became the Dark Knight. I was absolutely relieved when Matt Calls says Pattinson, who got the role over Nicholas Hoult. In fact, Pattinson received the career-changing news on his first day on the set of Nolan's film. It's so bizarre, he says. I was like, what a coincidence this is happening. It's absolutely crazy. A surprise benefit was that he was able to pepper Nolan, who made the Dark Knight trilogy, with questions. I was talking about things to do with a batsuit, Pattinson recalls, how to get more movements in it. Pattinson won't say Whether he's committed to additional Batman movies, I don't know anything, he says. I've got an idea how to do about 4 scenes and then I'm working on the rest gradually. At one point in our conversation, he offers a mundane comment about Joaquin Phoenix, who stars in Joker, a movie he hasn't seen yet, before asking to retract it. Oh, shh, he says, adding that he's not accustomed to think about spoilers. I definitely should not say that. I'm so used to pretty art house movies where you can watch the movie 3 times and still not know what it's about. That's interesting that he said that. It makes you wonder, and there are already theories going around that if Joker is successful and if Joaquin Phoenix wants to come back around, would he actually reprise his role as Joker to be in the Matt Reeves Batman universe, making the Matt Reeves Batman universe and the Joker universe separate, both separate from the DCEU. That is an interesting concept indeed, and for some reason, he wanted to retract some comment that he didn't want to say. So I'm really intrigued by what that comment is. Speaking of Joker, this is coming from Deadline. Deadline was able to have an interview with the Venice Film Festival director Alberto Barbera, and he had a lot of things to say about the Joker. Joker was very strong. It was potentially a risk for Warner Brothers to bring to it a festival, but the response has been excellent. So Alberto says, I think they made a good choice, the right choice. The film deserves the reception it is getting. It goes beyond the boundaries of the genre. Joaquin Phoenix's performance is outstanding, and Todd Phillips did a great job. And Deadline also asks, what are its Academy prospects, do you think? Even at this early stage, I expect it to be running at least 3-4 categories, including Best Picture. And Alberto from Venice Film Festival says they're very good. Absolutely, it will be in the running. So it gets you a little bit more excited to hear these words coming from the Venice Film Festival, coming from critics, even though, yeah, you have to judge a movie by your own, you have to go in to watch it, but seeing that it's in the running, possibly running for Oscars, this is coming something really special, something that's really different in terms of comic book genre movies, even though it's its own movie with using comic book references, but you can't help but get excited to know that a comic book genre, including Best Picture and all and such, is going to be in the Oscars. Although we've seen that with like Black Panther and stuff like that, I think this is probably a bit more elaborate, a little bit more with depth, and something that probably deserves to be in Oscars more than those other films. But that could just be me. But at least we can see DC in a new light once again, since Heath Ledger winning the award for the Joker. We can finally see another Joker possibly winning Best Picture, Best Screenwriting, Best Writing, everything, and including Best Actor award for the Oscar, for the Academy Awards. So staying within the realm of DCEU, this comes from Variety. From Variety, the Suicide Squad adds Doctor Who's Peter Capaldi to cast Eyes Pete Davidson. Doctor Who star Peter Capaldi has joined James Gunn's upcoming The Suicide Squad, with Pete Davidson also in talks to come on board. Warner Bros. Had no comment on the casting. James Gunn is directing the sequel to the 2016 feature based on DC Comics anti-heroes. Margot Robbie, Joel Kinnaman, Jai Courtney, and Viola Davis are reprising the roles, and Idris Elba, John Cena, David Dastmalchian, and Daniela Melchior have joined the film. Guardians of the Galaxy director Gunn also wrote the script to the project, in which supervillains are recruited by the government to carry out secret missions. Capaldi, a native of Scotland, starred in Doctor Who between 2012 and 2017. He won an Oscar in 1995 for the live-action short Franz Kafka's It's a Wonderful Life, which starred Richard E. Grant. Capaldi has also directed 9 episodes of BBC's Getting On. He's a rep by Pardigum and Troika. Davidson joined Saturday Night Live in 2014. He recently starred in and co-wrote an untitled comedy for Universal, which adds Judd Apatow directed and produced. Davidson is rep by ICM, Brillstein Entertainment, and Gray Krause Sandler Des Rocher. So this news was first reported by Deadline, and it's going throughout media right now. That's awesome. A Doctor Who is in the Suicide Squad. For a lot of people, fans of Doctor Who, that should make them pretty happy. It was in a recent con, he actually mentioned that he had to shave his head for a major blockbuster role. So this could be it, that he had shaved his head for the Suicide Squad in an unknown secret role, and I'm really intrigued by what that is. The other person, Pete Davidson, being a comedian, once again, another comedian joined the Suicide Squad, probably worries a lot of people right now and don't want another funny, run-of-the-mill Marvel type movie with the Suicide Squad. But given what James Gunn has done with Guardians of the Galaxy, it's probably that same type of movie at this point, but probably able to go a little bit darker and able to go to other realms of and going to rated R, something that Disney won't let Marvel do. So that could be something compelling in itself. He could probably go into the realms of Slither, realms of, Super, maybe even some of that Brightburn stuff, even though he produced that one. But I think with that R-rated mentality that Warner Brothers is allowing for DCEU, it could go into areas that, like I said, Disney doesn't want to go, even though they have elements of comedy and stuff like that. I think there are aspects of the Suicide Squad that will differentiate itself from movies like Guardians of the Galaxy. At least we hope, in any case. So that is that for today. I want to thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.